I am the Knight. I am Batman.
Hey y'all, Siege here, and today let's discuss the Stalker and his history up to this point. Because there may not be a singular entity in the Origin system with a higher death count on Warframes, as well as literally no fear of the Tenno themselves, something I would think few can actually claim. His burning hatred coming from two known failures and perhaps another, but all occurring during the last gasps of the Old War, when the sentients had been pushed back and the Orokin had seemingly conquered their artificially created progeny, bringing a conclusion to years of brutal war. An occasion so momentous that the very highest of the Orokin society decided to honor the warriors directly responsible for their victory, the combined efforts of the Warframes and Tenno, providing a force that no one in the known universe could contend against. The Stalker's failure is explained in his own codex entry discussing his view of the day and the situation in question. Some have walked these desolate worlds while you have slept. Some like me. I remember what you did. I remember the day. The Tenno appeared at the terminus, gleaming and victorious. Our cold and gold emperors, breathless, bathed you in Savior's silk. Then came the sound. Across all of our worlds, all at once, the ceremonial Naga drums. A royal salute to the honored Tenno. 10 solemn beats to declare the suffering was over. I watched from a distance with the rest of the Low Guardians. With each beat, terror began to crush my throat. The Tenno were not stoic and silent. They were waiting. They were poised. I tried to call out, but only a strangled whisper escaped. When the 9th beat rang, a torrent of blood filled the stadium, loosed by Tenno blades. The drums, the Empire, fell silent forever. Now I hunt, dividing your numbers, watching from that dark place, cataloging your sins. I am the ghost of retribution. You may forget, but you are not innocent. The warrior that would become the Stalker did not warn his masters in time of what he noticed. The Tenno poised like predators, waiting for the moment to strike, and was not close to enough to save them from the slaughter these children are said to have caused that day. Further, this moment would come to play out in his mind as a kind of thorn, one that would require, perhaps even demand, this retribution he seeks at all costs. His weapons, branded with the very song of his emotional state. Dread, hate, despair, act as a litany of instruments. He performs his death song for the ones that destroyed his way of life. You see, although we know the Orokin elite to be uncaring leaders at the very least, probably even better described as forcing their preferred version of dystopia upon the very people that built their way of life, consider that there would most assuredly be those that were living completely normal lives, perhaps vaguely or even unaware completely of the travesties their own governments were inflicting. I'm sure many can identify with that, and those people too were forced into the collapse the Tenno had caused. I don't believe it too hard to imagine how this violent shakeup of government, commerce, trade, shortly after unrest, martial law, and in the end, pure chaos, would change the fabric of society on every imaginable level. This is what mostly led to the collapse itself. Thousands of years of operating procedure being decimated in minutes? Seconds? In all forms of war, collateral damage will always exist, and for those that were maybe not quite as cognizant of the level of impropriety the Orokin were guilty of, most assuredly being a significant section of the system's population, that upon hearing the news of what happened to their government, may have viewed the Tenno as every bit the enemies they had previously regarded the sentients as. And that wouldn't include any other type of propaganda. Say like what we eventually saw Ballas would come to utilize regarding the Tenno during the events of the New War. Consider even the level of Ballas' success in that future undertaking may have been born of extensive experience and personal research, especially given his hatred of the Tenno to begin with. Would one of those, an executor, one who was supposedly amongst the annihilated, utilize still existent Orokin propaganda chains while in hiding to villainize the Tenno? While not confirmed, this would match the behavior we would see him exhibit frequently, so it can't be discounted. The very idea that most, including those in the know within their hierarchy like Drusus Levirian, believe Ballas to be dead, speaks to just how formidable his ability to compel others to do his will may even be. After all, he was able to garner the favor of an entire race of beings who had sworn vengeance against his very kind, and became their own emperor, requiring an odd quirk in the fabric of reality, with both the mysterious return of the Lotus and the introduction of the Drifter to stop his conquest. The majority of those that lived within the very system the Tenno believed they were saving would have most likely hated them for the aftermath of it all. Because even in the kind of caste society they had been generationally born into, there would come to be comfort in the familiar, maybe even joy. And if nothing else, certainly love. And what the Tenno would have most certainly taken from countless entities just trying to make a living would have been, well, everything. The hero in these cases is the viewpoint by which we are given. But what would it look like from the man whose wife and kids were crushed by rogue pieces of debris from a blast? Or worse, an errant shot that just missed their target. This is what many would have had to contend with in the immediate fog at the tail end of the old war. And that's not even to talk about what these people may have dealt with during the war itself. Imagine believing the conflict with the sentients to finally be over, that tomorrow might be a little different. No war to contend with, no more worrying about the safety of your family, only to find out days later that the life that you had known for as long as you and your family could remember is gone. While the specifics of interactions between those who would have experienced this time may differ and further remain a mystery forever, what isn't, through multiple records and countless interactions, is one entity's response to it all. The Stalker's desire for a kind of total retribution, one he believes to be justified so much that, as a low guardian of the Orokin, he has taken it upon himself to attempt to eradicate an enemy that by all rights he had known as, well, for lack of a better term, superheroes. Even gods just days prior. This should be something that isn't possible, so what happened? Well, in the past I've postulated that he could very well be a Warframe, unknowingly controlled by another Tenno, one whose beliefs perhaps did not align with the rest of the Tenno collective, and has since been hunting others of his kind. Something appeared to have masked the Tenno's memories enough to make them believe that they were the very frames they controlled, as seen during the second dream, and the repeated deaths of his frame at the hands of countless Tenno, with the continued ability to resurrect and return for more, would suggest as much, as we've seen multiple instances of what look like dead Warframes on countless battlefields, suggesting them to be more suit than sentient entity in this regard. Their consciousness gone to the same place that all recipients of the transferred mind come to occupy. It makes you wonder if the voices we seem to hear in areas of exceptional void instability may have had an origin of their own. In fact, the conversation regarding exactly what or who he is appears to be an ongoing point of contention between him and Hunhow, something they too began exploring during our confrontation aboard the Orbiter.
All your dread-long life, you've waited for this moment. But you're asking yourself, was I one of these wretched things? You know the answer. You still hate them. You still hate yourself.
And one that continues within a piece of recently released dialogue entitled The Reaper's Lament. What do you owe them, my shadow? A lifetime of old hate spent pupating new regrets? Envy those whose bodies your vaunted masters stole, for even beyond the grave they take so much more from you. Do what must be done, or else forsake what gristle clings to your soul. No. How much do you recall, my shadow? Do you even remember what came before this time of scars? Your masters sent steel and flesh to cross the gap. Clay they wish to roll and sculpt into a new and toxic paradise. Laughable. Even at the end, they never truly understood the answer lay not in things their stolen, blue-bloated fingers could covet. The answer was song. Your music reached our listening spines in Tau long before their rebel crusades. Do you understand, my shadow? When you heard the Naga drums, did you realize my people heard the thunder of our bitter, belated victory? When your pride consumes all that you love, perhaps they will hear the wail of your failings back home as well. Silence. I've always applauded your taste in weapons, my shadow. Simple, silent things they are, made for the business of killing. All save one. I made myself into a weapon of war so that you might transcend your hate. Even then I knew our slaughter would be indiscriminate, but the scythe is not a killing thing to sully so dispassionately. It is an instrument of cultivation, growth, even love. For that love, worlds bloomed beneath me. For redoubtable Pergasa, cities burned at the end of my tongue. That is the way of science. We cut what we must so that new life may flourish. Please, my shadow, take up this scythe once more. You distract and disorient, drawn as disease is to a wound when the Tenno are most distracted, yet the strongest among them still evade you. Has time worn down your skills, my shadow, or simply your conviction? Always more. It does seem tiresome. One monster to buckle against the weight of battalions. Little wonder you would seek allies, friends, confidants, family. It has ever been their greatest strength and your deepest shame. Insults. A peek into your mind. Glass may be easier to pierce, but meat is simple enough to read. You know what must be done, but still fear your own weakness more than the outcome. You fear that you have taken too long, that your hesitation has already destroyed reflections. Yes, I suppose I know better than most what it's like to miss one's chance to repair broken bonds. All the more reason you should heed me. It is not too late. Another of their number flows past my sodden grave. Did you see her, my shadow? Of course you did. So, unlike your perfunctory skulking, she rises resplendent, full of brazen, fragrant life. In my own lost vibrancy, oh, how I would have reveled in snuffing out her playful joy. Unfortunately, something beat me to the task, delivering only a wounded husk into my grasp. I grow sentimental in my rot. Else, I've been down here long enough to find kinship with my fellow Jetsam. Instead of final death, I offered her the insult of rescue, a world shaper's breath adapting her shape to better survive our shared prison. And still, her spirit did not break, my shadow. So what happens next? Leave me. Ha! I can slip the wounds of our old war no more than you. Yet you alone can choose to drag your brooding Tegument elsewhere. Let us dispense with veils, my shadow. You want me here to lament at your ear like some tripping conscience. You want to hear the truth. I am enough. You saw a flicker of their filth in yourself once, if only for an instant. Now I see it in your words. You know that you have run the gambit and come up short. No matter which way the tides drift, the only options left to you will bring a target upon your back.
Let them come.
They will, my shadow. I only hope you're prepared. Your actions have consequences. There's admittedly a lot more context added to what we had already understood regarding this character and his own personal torment, something that was only briefly touched on during the second dream.
The moon. Somehow, Ordis actually remembers the last time I was here. Concern for the operator is at critical levels.
The suspense is killing me. Lotus, you have to tell us your secret. Hey, don't cut me off.
Within the moon lies the reservoir, the secret to your Tenno power. But the secret is dangerous. It drove the Stalker to madness. Forgive my deception. I was only trying to protect you from the same fate.
And given the gravity of the situation regarding the new war was only hinted at through vague imagery, this lingering hatred, maybe even softening somewhat with him allowing his services to the Drifter in Duviri, a repayment for what the Drifter and subsequent Tenno were able to achieve in defeating Ballas and restoring the system to some level of normalcy. If in fact, this Stalker is the same as the one that resides in our reality. Because the attacks themselves on the Tenno have not abated. And while many have questioned why they continue after the events of the new war, and why he appears to be indiscriminate in who he takes revenge for, I think the answer may be found in the context of this further discussion between the Stalker and Hunhow. Remember, this is my interpretation. I believe much is hidden in the expanded wordsmithing being used. Terms one wouldn't normally hear, but nonetheless extremely telling in the aggregate of the message as a whole. You see, the focus of this back and forth appears to very much surround the concept of redemption, and further bearing the sins of the past in that very place, the past. Hunhow asks the Stalker what exactly he's still getting out of continuing the hate of the Tenno in a post-Orokin world, and maybe insinuating the principle he's staked the entirety of his current existence is the very thing that keeps him from ever actually finding any type of closure, and by extension, peace. In fact, Hunhow even questions the veracity of the very hate the Stalker clings to, remarking that, for as formidable as his skills are, the most powerful Tenno continue to elude him, asking if, rather than his skills diminishing, is it more apt to wonder if his hate is beginning to waver as the decades and centuries pass. Hunhow even openly wonders how much of his old life under the Orokin he remembers, and if their rule was really worthy of his continued conviction, noting that the Sentients realized the cancer of the Orokin and their plans for the Tau system, the very place the Sentients had made their own home, and were hellbent on stopping the encroaching empire at all costs. In fact, being a farmer himself, Hunhow waxes poetic in regard to the dual nature of the scythe, that while it's known for its capability as a weapon, in reality it's far better suited for agriculture and growth. And for anyone who's ever grown a living being, be it a plant in the garden or a parent to a child, knows that the most important part is the love it requires to cultivate. Hunhow remarks at how the lack of family may have even been associated with how the Stalker behaves now, allowing, potentially even seeking companionship in multiple forms, and that one in particular may in fact still be there waiting. Is this just another loss in a countless sea the collapse had created? Or was it another failure he can't seem to figure out how to live with? In the end, the Stalker is really left pondering the enormity of eternity and his place within, as well as if old grudges protecting the will of corrupt and, well, seemingly absent masters is worth the potential of the future. It's here I want to bring attention to his last statement, where he is confronted with probably the harshest truth Hunhow has to offer, that it's his choice to decide. Not like the typical life of a soldier, perhaps even to this day looking for orders from someone to feel normal. But that's not a life he can choose as much as Hunhow can return to being a warlord against the Orokin, and by extension the Tenno. Things have changed. Time heals all wounds, and while I'm not certain that's 100% accurate, it does seem to have quite the calming effect over a long enough period of time. What's interesting is that he is referred to wearing a suit. That is what a tegument is, a common term in Hell mythology, specifically referring to a living dynamic cellular structure consisting of proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and RNA. It forms a protective layer and the host parasite interface of the worms, serving both secretory and absorptive functions, which would largely suggest that he is or is wearing a helminth-infused Warframe. This would make complete sense. After all, he has all the same capabilities of one. However, I believe it's the nomenclature of what he was that is making it confusing. Typically, a low guardian didn't seem to qualify for the Warframe program, given how Ballas describes it.
The Helminth was created, born to yield these new warriors, worthy of battle against you, the great and terrible Hunhow. We took our greatest, volunteers or not, and polluted them with these cultured reagents.
But consider that maybe Ballas didn't have anything to do with him. What if this low guardian, in a fit of rage after the massacre of the Orokin elite, took the Helminth willingly, buoyed by a single burning memory, allowing him to keep some form of his psyche intact, enough to turn all of his remaining energy, passion, and rage into destroying what he deemed his greatest enemy? There is another in Warframe's lore who's done a similar thing, and incidentally, he too dons the armor of Excalibur. Umbra, to be precise, is shown to have kept his will intact by the very same thing: the rage and guilt of the vision of watching himself murder his own beloved son. And I think that's important because it may offer us a vision into what actually happens when a Warframe is transferred into by a Tenno, especially if its pain is healed. Could this occurrence allow their consciousness to rejoin the collective unconscious and achieve a kind of heavenly peace? It's said that those whose bodies are robbed through the process of continuity have their minds banished to oblivion.
The Orokin candidate would force their consciousness into the new chosen body, the Yuvan, consigning the mind of the hapless former owner to oblivion.
But could this be the same place, or could all of this be culminating into a perverted form made manifest by, well, another Orokin? The very whispers within the wall? Hunhow makes it very clear at the conclusion of this dialogue that, essentially, the Stalker needs to pick a side, because another conflict, one with the sentience, is most likely on the way, if Pazul has anything to say about it.
Bones of my father, fathom drowned, behold me. Carcass of my mother, flame devoured, behold me. Limbs of my children, piecemeal, unblinking, behold me.
The War of the Archons will come to the system at some point, and if he continues to choose to hunt the Tenno, not only will the Sentients hunt him for his part of the new war, but he will have to contend with the Tenno as well, and perhaps a reconnection with a former colleague may offer him the clarity he requires regarding the matter. Was he a former Warframe with the Tenno once? The existence of a pretty familiar type of Lisette may suggest as much, with the fact that he was unable to kill our Tenno upon reaching us in the second dream. Hunhow makes the reference multiple times regarding him believing this to be a possibility, and maybe that was the broken bonds he still needs to mend. Imagine fighting side by side with a Tenno, offering your very body as their weapon and forming a connection, maybe even bordering on love, and have your entire life wiped away by that very person without a reason why. Now, these reasons have made themselves apparent to everyone over the years, but during that moment, betrayal, despair, dread, and hate would not be uncommon emotions to exhibit in such a horrific scene. The true nature of the Stalker has yet to be determined. The future may offer more in that regard. Personally, I have little doubt that Stalker is in fact a Warframe. It's more so the method by which he became one, when, and most importantly, why, that's still a mystery to me. Further, Will he turn out to be an angel in our future war with the sentients? And finally, will you forgive him his transgressions, should he ask it? I've often wondered why he seems to want vengeance from every major enemy we take down. Like, did they hire him post-murder to find us? And I came to realize, in actuality, the reason is he's been watching us from the start. Watching every move we make, waiting in the shadows in potentially every mission, or enough of them to keep you on your toes at least. And when he senses you at your weakness, he strikes. To him, it doesn't matter who you kill. He's using their death as justification for his vendetta. Is this evidence of his weakening constitution? I'm not sure, but consider this. He's already shown up in our orbiter unannounced.
Stalker! How?
Do you think it's the only time he's done it? Or does he just watch us to see what new toys we have? New mods, companions, whatever? A black and red mosquito, just paying us a visit, reminding us of his presence and letting us know he's awaiting. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video and it got you thinking about what the Stalker and his constituents may have experienced at the conclusion of the Old War, and how they may have interpreted it. In truth, although it does appear the Lotus masterminded this plan with Hunhow and Ballas's assistance, the specifics of how this great massacre occurred remain exceptionally vague and mysterious, almost as mysterious as the events that brought these sworn enemies, the Tenno, the Lotus, Hunhow, and the Stalker, to becoming allies in the first place. Who's next? At any rate, I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk at you all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.